HTML can express logic such as conditionals and loops unless you're using a templating language like Pug. So if we look here, for example, Pug has methods each and while, and we can loop over each of those items using each, and then we get this HTML output. So in vanilla JavaScript and HTML, we would have to do this by hand, and let's look at an example of that. So if I scroll down here, and in CodePen we can say app, then let's open a script tag. I'm going to query the app element, document query selector. Then I'm going to create the user object. It's going to say logged in false. Then I'm going to create a toggle to say user logged in. So we're saying flip it to the opposite value of what it is currently. So you can say user logged in. And then of course we have to update the UI, and let's create the updater function update UI. So we have to store our markup somewhere, so we can create a HTML. Then we're going to say if the user is logged in, let the current markup be button that says log out, and then we can copy this over. I think it's really similar. And we can say if the user isn't logged in, we're going to say login. And then lastly, we just have to say app element inner HTML is equal to whatever the current HTML is, right? So we can say app element query selector. We want to query the button, so when we click it, we can toggle and flip the value, right? And lastly, we just have to update the UI, so it shows update UI. And let's see if it works. Awesome. Okay, so how do we do something like this in Svelte? As I say here, it doesn't look bad, but I think we can do better. So this is the same example using Svelte. So we can go to the Svelte repo, and we can open a script tag. We can do the same thing. We can say user logged in is false. Then you're going to create a toggle function. I'm going to say user logged in to opposite of the current value. And then we're going to go to our template, and we can say if user logged in, and we can close it. We can say we want the button, should say log out, and let's add an event listener. When we click, we want to do what? We want to toggle it, and then we can copy over the same block. You can just say if the user isn't logged in, then you just want to change the text and say login, and it should work the same. Let's try it out. Let's say we want to loop over a list of items. So how would we do that? So if we can scroll here to this example, we can go back to CodePen. We can clear our previous example. Let's do it again because we're practicing and building that muscle memory, right? So we can open a script tag and say let app element document query selector app, and then let's just copy over this data, since it would be really tedious to type that out. We need a place to store our markup, so we can say let to-dos HTML. Just scroll down. So what we're going to do next, we're going to loop over each of these items, right? We're going to have checked, that's going to correspond if this value is true, so it's completed, so the first should be checked. And then we're going to output the markup. We're going to use an ID if you want to query it in the future to be able to edit or delete it or whatever. And then we just output it to the screen. Yeah, so let's do that. So let's go for let to do of to-dos. We can say let checked. If the to-do is completed, say it's checked, or you can say null. And we can say to-dos HTML. We can just add each of the list items. So you can say li, we can close it here. Let's give it a nice ID, to-do ID. Then we can say input, and we can see if it's checked or not. Should be a type checkbox. And let's say span, and it should have the text of to do text. And then let's just output the result to the screen. App element inner HTML is a template literal. We say URL, the to-dos HTML, URL, and it should work. We get undefined here because we need to, let's give it a default, and this should work. So how would we do the same in Svelte? So this is the same example using Svelte. Let's go to the Svelte repo. We can remove what we had before. Now let's open the script tag. And again, we're going to be lazy. So let's copy that over. And then we're going to create a list, right? And then we can use the each block. So each to-dos as to do. We can close the each. Now let's create an li. And inside of the li, we can say input checked to whatever to do completed is. Let's say type checkbox. Let's close it. And then we're going to have a span that has a to do text value. And that's it. Next, I want to show you how you can destructure values from the item you're iterating over and get the index or provide a key and what the key is. I have an example here. So we just need to slightly modify our example. So for example, if you don't want to constantly type to do dot, etc., we can just destructure all the values we know that exist. So we can do each to do's as we have an ID, text, completed, and we can just remove this, and we can remove this, and it works. When you have a list of items and you're going to be modifying it or changing it in some way, you need to give Svelte a key so it knows what items are changing, else you're going to run into weird issues, and that can be any unique identifier, even an object, or the index. But really advise against using the index as the key because it's not guaranteed to be unique, so use a unique value if you can. So for example, we can get an index here, but for the key, this is how you specify the key. You can supply the ID because you know it's unique. So let's talk about fetching data next. So for example, how would you fetch data on the client using regular JavaScript? Let's explore that. So we can remove our previous example here. Say again, div app. We can open the script tag. Let's do that. So you can say let app element, document, query selector, going to be app. So we can fetch the data. In this case, I'm going to use the Pokemon API, and we're going to get the name of the Pokemon and its image. That's going to be a sprite. So we're going to mark it as async because we need to wait for the completion of a fetch over the network, right? And then we're going to accept the Pokemon name. We're going to say the URL. It's going to be a template string. It's going to be HTTPS colon PokeAPI call API v2 Pokemon, and then we're going to say the response. We're going to await the response. Use fetch. It's also going to be a template string. We're going to say it's going to be the URL, and then we're going to take the Pokemon name, right? And then we can destructure the values from the response. We can say name sprites. We can say await response of JSON because the response should be a JSON, so we can loop over it and do other things using JavaScript, right? Okay, so we just have to say return. We want to return the name, and for the image in the data we have to go to sprites and it's front default. And I know this by looking at the API because, for example, we can take this, we can go here, and we can say, for example, Pikachu, and it's going to return us data, so we can just snoop around and see what values we want and take them. Okay, so let's go here. We need to render the UI. We can destructure the name and image after we await the Pokemon data we want. So we can say name image equals await, fetch Pokemon, that's going to be Pikachu, and then let's create the markup. App element inner HTML is going to be a template literal, and you can say h1. Let's just close it. Say we want the name, then we want the image with the source of image, and the description is going to be the Pokemon name. Now we just need to render the UI and it should work. So let's see. Oh, but let's see what's wrong. So we can go, I probably messed up the URL or something. Huh, okay, yeah. So if we say Pokemon slash, it should work. Awesome. So we get Pikachu returned. So let's see how simpler this is using Svelte. So we can clear our previous example here. So in Svelte you can easily resolve a promise using the await block, but you can also resolve the promise in the script tag if you want, just like we did it in the code pen right now. Let's just open a script tag. And let's copy over this function because you already typed it once. And this is how simple it is. So we can use literally an await block. You can say await, call the function, fetch Pokemon. What Pokemon do we want? We want Pikachu. Let's just end this await block. Yeah, we can give it a loading state. We can say fetching Pokemon. We can see that briefly, but it's so fast that it's not going to show. Yeah, so we can say then with the result we get, we can say h1, just format, say Pokemon.name, and it's already working as you can see. We can say image source, Pokemon image, and description is going to be Pokemon.name. Yeah, so let's close it, indent it, and awesome, it's working. So we can also have a case if something bad happens. We can say catch error, and then we can output the error that's returned. We can say something went wrong. We can say error.message. And that's it. So as I say here, in the JavaScript example, we didn't even add checks for scenarios where the promise could be pending, fulfilled, or rejected, and just hope it works. So using Svelte, you don't have to think about it.